So if you've been interested in 500 series, maybe you want to check it out for the first time, or maybe you want to add to your collection, whatever that is, this is a good time to be watching this particular channel because I'm currently in the process of doing an entire video series on 500 series type units. BAE has been a company that has been doing Neve style clones. In other words, really trying to capture the magic of those old analog pieces that were in those analog Neve consoles, really accurately and true to the nature of the original design by Rupert Neve. And so ultimately, BAE has done a fantastic job, an amazing job of doing that. Anybody who's used their gear before knows that you're really buying some of the best available today. Not sure about you, but I love the 500 series workflow. I enjoy having all of that gear right in front of me with an easy reach of the mix position so I can stay in the zone while mixing. So because of my love for that, I'm actually redesigning a desk back there. I've got a wood shop out in my garage, and I'm going to pop that into my CNC machine and start working on a completely redesigned studio desk to be determined at some date in the future to show to all of you. Hopefully you'll like it as much as I think I will. So ultimately, I'm going to put a lot of 500 series units in there. So I thought today would be a great time to really do an entire series on 500 series gear so that I can see, as well as some of you may be able to see, gear that you maybe haven't experienced firsthand so far. And so what I have been working on in this particular channel, I started it really last week, and I'm doing an entire series of videos on 500 series gear. I'm part of the affiliate program with Sweetwater. That comes with a couple of benefits. One, there's a couple of links down below to Tommen and Sweetwater. If you want to buy something, I would appreciate it if you would use those links. I get a small commission, and it's really the only way that I'm able to sustain continuing making this channel without having somebody provide input on the content, which I would never allow. And so ultimately, because of that relationship, I worked with Sweetwater and asked them to send me a bunch of gear so that I could show to all of you. Once I get through the first series of this, we'll start with round 2 and keep going. As you can see back here, I've got 500 series rack that they sent me, as well as various 500 series pieces. I've started out already doing a video on the SSL EQ, and today we're going to be talking about the BAE B15 EQ, which, if you're not familiar with BAE, they have a wonderful reputation of making some of the highest quality Neve style analog outboard gear available today. They have a strong reputation and are considered by many the very best, if certainly not in the top tier of all manufacturers making Neve clones. Okay, you like sound effects? Okay, so today this is what we're going to be looking at. That's the BAE B15 EQ. This thing, I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts on it. The last one I didn't really give my opinions that much, but I feel like that's important for me to be able to do that when I go through this. So I'm going to talk about the things that I like and some of the things that I think they need to do to fix this. And yes, I do have some things. Well, really, honestly, BAE, I've really only got one thing to do for you, and I'll get that for you in just a second. So let's talk real quick before I get into this one. Let me talk about a question that some of you may have. It's some of the ones that I've talked to a lot of people, and it is one of the things that comes up quite frequently. And I know the way I particularly work, if I'm tracking, I don't tend to do a lot of EQ when I'm tracking. However, I do use a lot of outboard EQ when I'm mixing through hardware inserts. But we all have a different workflow, and I'm not going to say what a right or wrong is. But ultimately, this is going to cover that regardless of the way you're going to use it. Now, one of the things that a lot of people have talked to me about in the past is they think, okay, for outboard gear, I'm going to focus on mic preamps and compressors because I'm going to use those on the way in, and that's really where I want my analog to really be most prevalent. And I get that, and I understand that. That's typically the way I work. Now, understanding that, a lot of people have kind of told me, hey, I would just rather go plugins for EQ versus analog gear because in their mind, plugins have gone further in the EQ world maybe than compressors or something else, which I don't really understand that logic. But Regardless, some people hold it because, well, they've told me, and I've not heard it from just one person, but quite a few. And so ultimately, one of the things I can tell you, and this is just my personal opinion, you've got to come to this conclusion on your own. You've really got to evaluate this for yourself. I love the sound of an outboard EQ. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I believe strongly, for me, again, don't come and criticize me because you disagree with me. You have every right to have your opinion, but so do I. I can already see some of the comments flying for what I'm about ready to say because I'm going to piss some of you off. I know it. And I don't really care, okay? But ultimately, the sound of an outboard EQ is way better than any plugin that I've used. There are fantastic plugins, but they just don't have the vibe and the life and the air and the depth of a quality outboard analog EQ. I'm not going to say every outboard analog EQ, that would be foolish, but ultimately a quality one. And this certainly fits that bill. I love this EQ. I love it. I love it. I love it. Would I have wanted an additional band? Yes, but they make that, okay? This is the one I have. It's 3 bands, and they're incredibly musical. Now, ironically, I find when I use this, I tend to hone in on a lot of the same frequencies for different parts, but that's also not that uncommon anyway. And where like this is at 1.5K, I would have preferred it maybe at 1.2, but that's not how it works. That's not the character and the beauty of this EQ. Keep in mind the frequency Q on these particular EQs is quite wide. You don't have the V shape on something like this. You have that really kind of ultimately wide, hey, I've probably went back to the buffet too many times and had to loosen my belt to get back up at the, that unity gain section of it. But, and I've been there, done that a few times myself. But that's the EQ curve is a lot different on these. And I think a lot of people don't quite realize it or understand it. And so this thing, it's smooth. I will tell you, it is, you feel like it's just moving frequencies with air. Now I know how stupid, well, actually frequencies are moved by air, but it seems like they're kind of floating gently and softly in cotton, kind of being smoothed out around, no harsh, nothing. It just seems to do that for me. And so, gosh, I sound like some cheesy infomercial. It's ridiculous. But I'm a big fan of this EQ. I would not want to part with it, but I'm going to have to. So that means I'm probably going to dig out my money and buy one of these things because I love it that much. It really impressed me that much. And it's going to be interesting to see how we go about this because kind of when you start too early on that kind of that gold standard, and I got to be careful here because, I don't want to be like Dave Portnoy out there and, one bite. Everybody knows the rules when you take 14 bites. I love Dave Portnoy, by the way, and I watch all of those videos, and I'm a pizza fanatic. But anyway, I'm just having fun at Dave's expense, and he doesn't know me, and he doesn't care. Sure, but this EQ is fantastic. And so what about the gripes? I got a gripe. I've got a big gripe. BAE, if you happen to watch this, I cannot stress this enough. Put some freaking proper markers on these things. It is almost impossible, for me at least. I mean, I'm literally having to go down there with my fingernail to find out what frequency I had it on, and that's critical for recall. These little indentations, they need to be wider, and it needs to be a bold color where it's very visible. And preferably something that will almost glow in the dark to somewhat. So when you're doing it in a darker space, as many people will be, you need to be able to see it. Now, you could make the argument, well, Barry, you don't need to see where the dials are going when you're EQing. You need to listen. And I agree 1,000,000,000% on that. I absolutely agree with that. However, when you work with analog in a digital system, you need most likely to do this thing called recall. And you need to make it, you need to make it very easy to be able to do that. Go to your recall sheet, mark it accordingly, so that if you've got to pull that mix back up, bam, you can get back there very, very, very quickly. And I found that to be one son of a all kinds of beeps. I hated it. So BAE, fix that. on the frequency dial. Fix it like immediately. You've really sucked at this one, okay? That's it. Oh my gosh, I love the sound of this thing. It's wonderful. Leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think. If there's other pieces of 500 gear you want to see on this channel and get reviewed, let me know down below. If I get the same people saying the same pieces, I'm going to get my hands on that piece of gear. I've given you my opinion today. It's a positive one. I love this thing. Don't feel guilty about buying it. If it's in your budget and you need a great sounding Neve EQ, this is the bad boy that's going to get it done.